All right, let's dive right into this explainer and tackle a massive, honestly kind of exhausting data problem that practically every business faces today. We live in an era where data is literally everywhere, but actual clear direction, well, that's surprisingly rare. Today, we're going to look at exactly how we can bridge that gap by using key performance indicators, or KPIs, to guide business decisions effectively. I mean, how many times have you stared at a stunning, ultra-colorful dashboard full of charts, but absolutely no one in the room knows what actual business decisions to make from it? You see this all the time, right? A beautifully designed screen, spinning 3D pie charts, bar graphs climbing to the moon. But when someone asks, so what's the actual business status? The only answer you get is, well, I don't know, but the dashboard looks incredible. And you know what's even worse? The numbers might be right there on the screen, but if nobody trusts them or even knows what underlying processes are driving them, they are entirely useless until we translate them. We have to stop asking people, what do you want to see, and start figuring out how we turn these meaningless visual displays into highly actionable decisions. That is exactly where KPIs come in. They cut through all that endless noise to highlight what truly matters for your company's success. Key performance indicators are measurable values that demonstrate how effectively an organization is achieving its key business objectives. They aren't just arbitrary data points. They're the specific metrics that tell us if we're actually doing what we set out to do in the first place. Think of them as your strategic compass. A solid KPI aligns entire teams with company goals and points you directly toward data-driven decisions rather than just relying on, someone's gut feeling. Whether you're trying to increase customer satisfaction by 20% or boost quarterly sales by 15%, your KPIs are what keep everyone pointed toward true north. They show you exactly where to focus your resources and help pinpoint what's really driving those performance changes. So, Section 1, Translating Complaints to Metrics. Let's look at a real-world, fast-moving consumer goods business case. Imagine a huge client complaining, hey, we're paying suppliers late, it's damaging our reputation, and man, it's costing a fortune in penalty fees. To solve the why behind this, we don't just guess. First, we conduct stakeholder interviews across procurement, accounts payable, and the vendors themselves. Next, we map out the end-to-end process, from the initial purchase order to the goods receipt note, or GRN, to the invoice and finally payment. Through this, we identify the real root causes, like missing GRNs delaying invoice matching, or maybe vendors submitting totally incorrect formats. Once we actually understand those root causes, we've got to ask the critical business questions so we know exactly what to measure, track, and prioritize. We need to ask things like, how many invoices are delayed and by exactly how long? How many GRNs are missing today? Where in the process is the absolute biggest bottleneck? Which suppliers are most affected? You see what we're doing? We're translating a vague feeling of things are broken into highly specific questions that demand solid data-backed answers.
Moving on to Section 2, From Gut Feeling to Facts. We'll explore this looking at a tech company case study.
Picture a tech company that's expanding super fast, but they're really struggling with chaotic ad hoc hiring and totally overworked employees. To fix this, we take their business questions and directly map them to specific KPIs and exact mathematical equations. This transforms that vague feeling of we're understaffed into hard, measurable facts. If the business asks, how long does it take to fill roles, we create the KPI average time to fill, calculated simply by subtracting the requisition date from the date of hire. If they ask, are new hires successful, we measure the 3-month retention rate. And to know if we even have enough recruiters to handle the load, we track open requisitions versus active recruiters. Suddenly, all that chaos, it's quantified. Now, good KPIs aren't just arbitrary numbers pulled out of thin air. They are actionable triggers for decisions. A genuinely good KPI has 5 key characteristics. First, it must be actionable, meaning it actually triggers a decision. Second, it must be dimensional, so you can filter and trend it over time. Third, it has to be aligned to true business goals. Fourth, it needs to be clear and easy to interpret for everyone. And finally, it absolutely must be reliable, meaning the source data is consistent day in and day out. To use these reliable metrics effectively, we have to look through a couple of different lenses. We need to contrast high-level strategic KPIs against operational KPIs. Strategic KPIs measure progress toward long-term organizational objectives, things like a 3-month retention rate or breaches in service level agreements, also known as SLAs. These are the ones usually reviewed by executive leadership to track overarching company health. On the flip side, operational KPIs track the efficiency of daily processes, like the average time to fill a role or the percentage of invoices booked within an SLA. These help your departmental teams identify bottlenecks right here, right now. Furthermore, we've got to balance leading indicators against lagging indicators. Leading indicators act as your early warning systems, predicting the future. For example, tracking the percentage of roles planned versus unplanned helps forecast pressure on the recruitment team way before it actually happens. Lagging indicators, however, measure past performance and confirm trends, like looking at the average days from a purchase order to an invoice. They evaluate the effectiveness of strategies that have already happened. You absolutely need both if you want to steer the ship effectively. Which brings us to Section 3, Prioritizing KPI Implementation Using the Data Readiness Framework. Here's a major reality check. You literally cannot measure 50 amazing KPIs perfectly on day one. Trying to launch them all at once is a total recipe for failure. Instead, we use a framework to prioritize implementation based on what your systems can actually handle right now. We start at the top of the pyramid with immediate readiness. This level focuses on high-impact metrics where high-quality data is already available to use today. These are your quick wins. You don't need fancy new software or massive process overhauls to track these. The data is just sitting there, reliable, and totally ready to be visualized and acted upon immediately. Next up is the short-term tier. This represents KPIs where the data isn't perfectly ready today, but it becomes accessible by making just a few minor system tweaks. Maybe it's adjusting a drop-down menu in your ERP system, or just ensuring a specific field is set as mandatory for your team to fill out. The effort is super low, but the payoff and visibility is huge. Moving a bit deeper down the pyramid, we hit the medium-term level. This one requires deliberate process improvements and routine data cleansing to maintain accuracy. So this means your data might be a bit messy or inconsistent right now. To track KPIs at this level, you'll need to invest time in cleaning up historical data and training your teams on better data entry practices, just so the metric actually reflects reality. And finally, the long-term foundation. This is for metrics where the data simply isn't reported yet. Tracking these requires significant infrastructural changes, perhaps even entirely new software deployments, or massive cultural shifts in how the business operates. You definitely don't start your KPI journey here. You build toward this complex level as your data infrastructure matures over time. So, successful implementation means actually plotting your desired metrics on a priority matrix, balancing their strategic business priority against how ready your data actually is. You want to focus your initial energy right on that top right quadrant, metrics that have high business priority and high data readiness. By doing this, you accelerate delivery, you build momentum, and you establish serious trust in your digital transformation program through quick, undeniable wins. So the absolute crucial point to take away from this explainer is a very simple truth. You can't automate what you haven't defined, and you can't define value without KPIs. Before you go out and buy that expensive dashboard software, before you try to use AI to magically optimize your supply chain, you have to define the math that equals success for your specific business. Instead of asking, what data do you want to see, let's leave you with the only question that actually matters when looking at your business operations. Look at your own dashboards right now. Look at your own reports and ask yourself, what do you need to act on today? If your metrics aren't answering that exact question, it's probably time to build a better compass.